Holy Gospel according to Matthew is found in the 16th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
From that time on, after Peter confessed that Jesus was the Messiah, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Then Jesus told his disciples, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Some years back, public television did a series on the worst jobs in history. One job they highlighted was leech collector. Doing this job meant stomping around in the swamp until the leeches attached themselves to your legs. Then all you had to do was pull them off, put them in a jar, all ready for the doctor to use. Sounds wonderful. Or there was the job of royal falconer in the Middle Ages, which certainly sounds better than collecting leeches. Taking care of magnificent birds of prey that belong to the king may seem pretty glamorous, until you discover that if you happen to lose one of these birds, the penalty is to have an equivalent weight of flesh to the size of the bird you lost cut off your body. One job the series didn't take on was the job of an Old Testament prophet. Jeremiah certainly doesn't seem to be enjoying that job in today's first reading. He's delivering yet another gloomy word from the Lord to the recalcitrant people of Judah. He feels as if the whole world is against him. He's even starting to wonder if God is against him. Here he is doing what God has commanded, and yet we hear him asking, Why is my pain unceasing, my wound incurable, refusing to be healed? He is not having a good day. The message God gave Jeremiah to proclaim to Judah wasn't a message that anyone wanted to hear. It was a warning that they were about to be overthrown and destroyed. What they needed to do, Jeremiah told them, was to turn to God for help now, before it was too late. It was the 6th century BC, and at that time the Babylonian Empire ruled across much of the Middle East. The tiny nation of Judah, the area around Jerusalem where Jeremiah lived, hadn't been conquered yet. But anyone with any sense could see that the Babylonian handwriting was on the wall. So what were the people of Judah doing about this threat? Nothing. Why should they? They were God's chosen people. They were invincible in their own eyes. No matter what they did, God would protect them. It didn't matter if they ignored God, if they worshipped idols, if they oppressed the poor, if they neglected the vulnerable. Good old God would come through for them in the end, and everything would be fine and dandy. Of course, it turned out that Jeremiah was right. Jerusalem was destroyed, the temple was flattened, and the nobility carried off into captivity in Babylon. Their illusion of invincibility had blinded them to reality. They preferred to believe that it can't happen to us, and it was only when it actually did happen to them that they saw this attitude for what it was, a comforting but ultimately fatal lie. In today's gospel text, Peter is also having a problem facing reality. He's saying it can't happen. It must not happen. Jesus has been explaining that he has to go to Jerusalem, where he will be arrested, tried, and executed. But Peter won't have it. He's convinced that Jesus cannot die. After all, he's the Messiah. What's the point of being God's anointed if God isn't going to protect you when you get into trouble? So Peter says, no, God can't. God won't let it happen. It was the same thinking that had infected the Judeans of Jeremiah's time. If God is with you, surely that means you ought to be protected from any and all troubles. What Peter can't grasp is that it's the very fact that Jesus is the Messiah that's getting him into trouble. Jesus has a calling from God to stand up against the forces of oppression, and the forces of oppression do not take kindly to this. The only way he can avoid suffering is if he walks away from that calling. Just like the ancient Judeans, Peter has to learn to face reality, to give up his illusions, his wishful thinking, and accept the world as it is. Most of us don't face the sort of cataclysms and challenges we've heard about in today's readings, but that doesn't mean we don't have the same tendency to create the illusion for ourselves that everything is as we want it to be. Some of our illusions are about small things, like thinking that we ought to be able to drive where we want, when we want, and find a place to park once we get there. But the reality is there's a limited amount of space on the road and a limited number of places to park. Thinking on a larger scale, we convince ourselves that we can consume what we want when we want without exhausting our planet's capacity to support us. Or we can buy what we want at prices we want to pay and not think about the less than subsistence level jobs we are essentially creating in underdeveloped countries. We believe we should have dream vacations, dream marriages, dream jobs, dream homes, but all these things are just that. They're dreams. Nothing is perfect. Even if we work as hard as we can, try as hard as we can, there will always be things that are beyond our control. We live in a world in which we have to compromise with one another and with life itself. Jesus tells his followers they will have to deny themselves if they want to follow him. And I don't think he means we should all wear camel hair shirts or eat locusts. I think Jesus is trying to say we need to deny our egocentric view of life, like the one Peter has just acted out. It isn't wrong to wish for a better world, but if we believe that there ought to be, by some magic, easy path to get there, we won't just be disappointed. We'll probably miss the path that we really do need to take. As Peter later discovers, it's only when he allows God to be God, that when he accepts that his plan for the future isn't necessarily the only plan or even the best plan, that he really finds the meaning and purpose he needs for himself. That those who lose their lives will find them. What are the illusions that we cling to, convinced that they are real or that they really certainly should be real? How prepared are we to see the world as it truly is? Can we see others as they really are, separate individuals with their own needs and hopes and dreams that we may actually damage as we blunder about in our own little closed-up reality box? Reality is often unattractive, but at least it's real. Can we as individuals accept the reality that life changes? That as we get older, our energy drops. That medical issues or stress at work or the needs of our families can require huge adjustments to how we live our lives. Or thinking broadly, that we as a nation, can we accept the reality that there are no easy answers to hunger, poverty, and violence? I don't know. What I do know is that our refusal to acknowledge the reality does not change what is real. Whether it's the urgent reality of living together on a crowded planet or the more personal realities of relationships that need attention, until we accept that it is what it is, we can't hope to deal with the problems reality brings or the blessings it has to offer. And the greatest of those blessings is the one that the ancient Judeans and Peter eventually discovered, that whatever reality we face, our God will face it with us. Amen.